Good morning. Good to be here again. Good to see everybody. Before I begin, I guess it's a great man. And when this song was published, that was the year that we moved from the Tampa area to Atlanta. At Emory University, there was a professor there that came out with teaching that God is dead. And that actually got into Time magazine. And the issue of Time magazine, right on the front, said, God is dead. And yet, as Brother Dicus said, our God, He is alive. Good memories of Brother Dicus and his stand for the truth. As we come together today, I want to begin our study in John the 11th chapter. Now, when I had mentioned that I was going to do a series of lessons from John, I wasn't thinking at that time that I was going to skip from chapter 1 to chapter 11. But I'll go back, Lord willing, and cover some of those chapters leading up to this. But for some reason, as I was contemplating and thinking about these lessons, this was on my mind this week. The resurrection, or the death and the resurrection of Lazarus here in John. Bruce has already read the first 14 verses. And just briefly, let us look at those verses and talk about what is going on here. In the first few verses, Lazarus dies. He's sick. His sisters, Mary and Martha, are there with him. And they were very special to Jesus. They were very close. Mary and Martha and Lazarus. I don't know which one was older, Mary, Martha, or Lazarus. But the Bible just talks about them as a family. And when we think about this, we find that they know that Jesus is the Lord. They know who He is. And so when Lazarus dies, the sisters immediately send word to Jesus. He's a few days, 2 days away. And so he gets the word. And then he says, I said that wrong. He's not dead when they send the word. They send the word that he is sick. And that's in verse 3. Jesus says in verse 4 that this sickness is not to end in death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified by it. Now he repeats that over in verse 40. When he is talking to Martha, he said to her, "Did I not say to you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" And the way it reads there, somehow I believe that Martha had gotten that message relayed to her of what Jesus said. But Jesus says that this is for the glory of God. What's going to happen over the next couple of days here is something that is going to give God the glory. So Jesus doesn't immediately go. Now you might think, well, Lazarus is sick. He may die. And there's some speculation, some people think that he had already died when he got this message. But Jesus stays a couple of days. Verse 6, 2 days, he stayed longer. Then he said to his disciples, let's go to Judea. So they're going to travel from Bethany, or from where they are, to Judea, to Bethany. But the disciples immediately say, maybe we better not go. There's something going on. And you remember that there was a group of people among the Jews that wanted to stone Jesus. We can go back to John the 8th chapter and verse 59. I won't go back there, but you can read that. In John 10 and verse 31, the Jews were seeking to stone him. But Jesus answers them. And he says, are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. His response to the disciples that are saying, let's not go, is, if anyone walks in the day, if anyone is in the light, if anyone is following God, if anyone is doing his will, I believe what he's saying here is that God is going to be with him. And he's not worried about the Jews there stoning him if he goes into the city. But the disciples say, we will go with you. And they follow him. But then we see in this reading that Bruce did that Jesus says in verse 11, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep. Well, their immediate response and thought is, well, if he's sleeping, then we don't need to really worry about him. He'll wake up. But Jesus comes back and says, Lazarus is dead. And I'm glad for your sakes that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. Again, Jesus is using this not only to glorify God, but to bring belief, to increase their belief in what is going to happen. In verses 16 and 17, verse 16 particularly, Thomas, who is called Didymus, said to his fellow disciples, let us also go, that we may die with him. All right, so here's the basis, the setting for this story here. This is a real story. It's something that really happened. It's not a parable. It's not something that Jesus uses to illustrate something, but it is a real story that we're going to see as we go through here. So Jesus, in verse 17, it says, when he got there, he found that he had already, when Jesus came, he found that he had already been in the tomb 4 days. And that's why I think that possibly when Jesus got this message that Lazarus was sick, that maybe by the time he got that message, Lazarus had died. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off. And many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. Martha, therefore, when she heard that Jesus was coming, went to meet him. But Mary stayed at the house. So they don't come out together. Martha comes out first. In verse 21, Martha says, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. I want you to think about Martha's faith. Martha says, if you'd been here, he would not have died. She had faith that Jesus could have healed him. And that's important. She knew, and she had witnessed, I'm sure, things that Jesus had done that gave evidence of his deity. And she says, if you had been here, you could have healed him. He would not have died. But then let's see that her faith is still strong. In verse 22, even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. She still has that faith, that belief that Jesus can do something for her brother. And Jesus says, your brother will rise again. Martha says, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Her faith is still strong. Jesus says in verse 25, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even if he dies. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? I want us to, think about these verses here. Jesus says, I am the resurrection. And Lord willing, we'll talk about 7 expressions, 7 times that Jesus uses this term, I am, in the book of John. Here he says, I am the resurrection and the life. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But when he says, I am the resurrection and the life, he says, he who believes in me will live even if he dies. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe? And she says, yes, Lord, I have believed that you are the Christ, the Son of God, even he who comes into the world. What Jesus is saying here is that death is going to overcome all of us. We're all going to die unless the Lord comes back. And he will come back at some time. But if we die before the Lord comes back, Jesus says here, we will never die. What's he saying? We will never die. What he is saying here is that we will die physically, as Lazarus did. But we will live for an eternity with God in heaven. We will never die spiritually if we have been faithful unto God. And there's no doubt in my understanding of what's going on here that Mary and Martha and Lazarus have been faithful. And he says, if you believe, you live and believe in me, you will never die. Now here's Martha's response. Yes, Lord, I have believed that you are the Christ, the Son of God, even he who comes into the world. This ends the conversation that Martha has with Jesus. In verse 28, when she had said this, she went away and called Mary, her sister, saying secretly, the teacher is here and is calling for you. And when she heard it, she got up quickly and was coming to him. This was something that they didn't make a public announcement or anything, but Mary gets up and goes to see Jesus. Now Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha met him. And the Jews who were with her in the house and consoling her, when they saw that Mary got up quickly and went out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Mary comes to Jesus, and she falls at his feet. Now, in general in life, they're friends. They're close friends. But at the same time, Mary also realizes, as Martha has expressed, that Jesus is Lord. And she comes and falls at his feet. If you had been here, Lord, my brother would not have died. Is she being sarcastic? Is she being rude in this? No, I don't believe so. It is expressing her faith just like Martha's faith. If you had been here, my brother would not have. She knew that Jesus could have healed her brother. But then Jesus observes her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping. And he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. I want to say something here about Jesus. Jesus is God. Jesus knows about death. But his feelings toward mankind are expressed here when we die. It bothers Jesus to see death, to see suffering, to see pain, to see grief that comes upon us when someone dies. And he is here, and he sees this, and he says he was deeply moved in spirit and was troubled. And he says to Mary, "Where have you laid me?" And they, not just Mary apparently, but those that had come with Mary, said to him, "Lord, come and see." And this is the shortest verse in the Bible. The verse that we all, when we were growing up, if we had to quote a verse, we'd go to this verse. And we could say, Jesus wept. But I want to tell you, it's more than just that. It is showing us the compassion that Jesus has. When he saw Mary and Martha and saw the others that were there, some of them were just putting on, to be there to maybe support, but some of them truly were weeping. And Jesus saw this, and he wept. Jesus had compassion. Jesus had feelings. He knew what death was like. And when he sees this, he wept. And that is obvious in the next verse. The Jews were saying, "See how he loved him." But then some of them said, "Well, could not this man who had opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man also from dying?" Of course. Yes, he could have. And Jesus doesn't respond, in a kind of a strong way and saying, "Yes, I could have." But what he does, he's deeply moved, he's still deeply moved, and he comes to the tomb. And it's a cave, and a stone is lying over the entrance. And he says, "Remove the stone." Now Jesus, being God, could have removed that stone himself. But he asked those there to remove the stone. Martha, the sister of the deceased, said to him, "Lord, by this time there will be a stench, for he has been dead 4 days." And this is important in a couple of ways. One is, Martha knows that he's dead. His body has already started to deteriorate. But also, the Jews believed, many of them, that if you were only dead for 2 or 3 days, that your spirit still hovered around, and if somehow you were revived, that spirit would enter back into your body. I think it's important here that Jesus makes sure that everybody understood that 4 days Lazarus is dead, and he's not coming back. His spirit is not returning by itself. And Jesus responds. This is the verse we referred to in the beginning. Jesus said to her, "Did I not say to you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" Why did Jesus wait? Why didn't he, from a distance? He could have healed Lazarus from a distance. He did that on other occasions. Why not now? Because he says, I want you to see the glory of God. I want you to see and understand the greatness, the glory of God. So they removed the stone, and Jesus raised his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. Now again, Jesus didn't have to pray to the Father. Jesus was God, the Son of God. He could have just said the words, and Lazarus would have come forth. But he goes to the Father, and he says, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but because of the people standing around, I said it, so that they may believe that you sent me. Jesus was not taking the glory upon himself. He was going to the Father. And then in verse 43, when he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And the man who had died came forth, bound hand and foot with wrappings, and his face was wrapped around with a cloth. And Jesus said, unbind him and let him go. A couple of things here that I wonder. Jesus is, I don't know if this is in his mind or not. It's a little speculation, but did Jesus really want to raise Lazarus and bring him back to life? If Lazarus had died 4 days, as they said, he was dead, he would have gone to paradise. There's another Lazarus that you can read about that did that. But think about this. Lazarus, yes, he had gone to paradise. Jesus brought him back. Did that bother Jesus that he brought him back from this great place that we all look forward to, that we want to go to when we die? And bring him back into a world full of sin? Perhaps it did. But Jesus is showing the glory of God the Father in doing this. That God can raise people from the dead. Even if they've been dead 4 days. And the result of this, the glory that Jesus prayed for, is found in verse 45. Many of the Jews who came to Mary and saw what he had done believed in him. Not all, because the next verse says some of them went to the Pharisees and told them things which Jesus had done. They wanted to arrest Jesus and take him there And that was what the disciples were worried about. They would stone him. They would kill him. And that's something that I'm going to leave to your reading and studying here in the rest of this chapter. But I want to make some applications from this real quick. There are three reactions, I think, that are common when we hear the gospel. One is we believe and we are converted. We say, I'm going to serve God, I'm going to do what He wants me to do, and I'm going to live for Him. Then their second is those who see what Jesus did here might believe it, but they're going to go on because they've got other things that they consider more important. Maybe a third group would say, I'd like to obey Him, but not now. I'm just not ready. But I think what we can see here is Jesus had the power over death. He was able to raise Lazarus from the dead. Jesus, not too long after this, is going to lay in Joseph's tomb. Most did not believe that He would come out. But an angel came and took away the stone in His tomb. And Jesus was raised, as He had raised Lazarus. One day we're going to lie in the tomb. And the Lord will descend from heaven and will raise us up from that tomb. From Lazarus to Jesus to the final resurrection of all those that have served God, as well as those that haven't served God. All will be raised. Well, another thought here. What kind of reaction do we have to these resurrections? We might say, I'm going to die. I know that. I don't know when, but I'm going to prepare now that I might be ready. And I think that's a big question that we all have to ask. Are we ready to meet the Lord when He comes back? When we die, it's over. Our life has been lived. Are we ready to meet the Lord? Another thing is, I know I'm going to die, but I'm not going to think about it. I'm just tell somebody else, leave me alone. And a third, I'm going to die. I know that, but I can't think about dying. I'm too busy living. Think about those attitudes. And I pray that the attitude of, I'm going to be ready. I'm going to serve God and prepare for that time. So how urgent is it for us today? Jesus knew that He was going to raise Lazarus from the dead when He got this message. And He knows that He's coming back to raise us from the dead. Are we going to be ready for that time? We're going to sing a song that has been announced. A song of invitation to encourage those that are in need of the gospel and that in some way